Hi, welcome back to Casual Watch Review channel. This week we are looking at another watch from the brand Zelos. We reviewed one a couple of weeks ago on the channel and I have to say I was very impressed with the fit, finish and the execution of that watch. It wasn't really to my personal taste, the style of it, but this watch that they've released, this is the new Thresher watch. Going to be released in a couple of days, but you can see it on their website now. I think this Thresher for me is one of the best that they have made so far in terms of the aesthetic that I like. This is a more refined size. It's using a titanium case, titanium bracelet. They've added a hardness coating to the watch and the bracelet to prolong its life before it gets scratched. I think this is going to be a big hit for them. The dial on this one, this is the Burgundy version, has a really nice glisten to it, and they've applied an enamel coating as well to give it a glossy look. And wait until you see what they've done with the lume on this watch. It's absolutely spectacular. I'm very interested to know what you think in the comment section at the end of this, so let's dive straight into the review. Before we kick off the review of this new Thresher, let's just spend a moment, give a nod of respect to the Zelos watch roll. 10 out of 10 for this. Has individual elements that you can take out, or individual pillows that you can take out. You can keep 3 watches in here, made to quite a nice quality standard. Also comes with this steel rose gold warranty card. I've always been a follower of the Zelos brand, but the style of their early ones, extremely distinctive, certainly not a homage of anything. They really forged their own path and should be highly commended for that. But the aesthetic of them never really was something that I was attracted to. Even the last one that we looked at, even though it was a beautiful watch with a blue meteorite dial, it's not a watch that I personally would have gone for. This is certainly more my style, and I jumped at the chance to review this. Big thanks to them for sending this watch into the channel. It's a GMT and it also has a world time round the bezel, and we'll talk about that later. Omnidirectional bezel. This is titanium, but it's also coated as well, so it has a hardness coating on it similar to a clear DLC, and it gives it 1200 hardness Vickers rating. It won't be completely scratch proof, but you're certainly going to get a lot more longevity out of it before you start to notice scratches than you would do on a case that is unfinished. The finishing does mean that there's a slightly more duller appearance to the titanium. Both the case and the bracelet are covered in this hardness coating, but the rest of the case is sandblasted and brushed finishing, with exception of the edges of the bracelet, which have a polished chamfer on them, which really capture the light. Screw-in links on the bracelet. Another phenomenal job here on the articulation. These central pieces do have an articulation. They don't go completely flat, but as you can see, there's a little bit of articulation. There is multiple different models of this. This is their Burgundy one, which has this Burgundy fume dial. It also has a glitter. Looks a little bit like aventurine, although not as distinctive as that. A glisten to it in certain lighting conditions. One of the other interesting things about this dial is the indices. The indices are made from Lumicast, but this is essentially composite that has luminescent elements in it, has the lume in the composite. And what that means is if we turn it on its side here, you can see that the numbers are 3D. So rather than lume being directly applied to the dial, these blocks of lume are cut out and then those are applied to the dial, and it gives it a great look. Extremely vibrant lume shot, as you're seeing here. There's even lume on the bezel. Extremely vibrant lume shot. It's a real spectacular view in the dark with the different colored lumes. The hands, as well as the GMT hand, lumed baton on the second hand that is also lumed. The GMT hand is quite unobtrusive. It is also polished like the hands are, not in a different color, but it does go all the way to the outer track, 24-hour track that you would time the second time zone on, which is good because this bezel is what you would call a world time bezel. What does that mean? Well, on a lot of GMT watches, you'll see that this bezel usually has a 24-hour markings on, so you can time a 24 hours on the inner rehort and then 24 hours on the outer bezel. So in effect, you're geting 3 time zones: central time zone, then the time zone around the rehort, and then a time zone on a bezel. So that's what a traditional GMT would have that has a rehaut that also has 24-hour dial. But what Zelos here have done is they put a world time bezel on. So rather than this maintaining a consistent third time zone, what this does is it allows you to calculate the time in certain cities. If you wanted to look at the time zone or calculate a time zone in a different city, you just move around the bezel. So that's how you do these calculations using this bezel. It's not to maintain a consistent second time zone, because if you wanted to maintain a second time zone in London, you would essentially just keep needing to move it around. It allows you to do calculations of other time zones in different countries, or different capitals, I should say, by moving this bezel round. So you maintain the second time zone, your consistent second time zone on the inner rehaut dial. This watch is using the 9075 True GMT, or I would call this a Traveler's GMT watch. If we pull the crown out, screw down crown, 200 meters water resistance. If we pull the crown out, you see you can move the hour hand back and forth a couple of hours. I find this very useful when I'm traveling, because I'll typically be traveling around the US and go an hour or 2 hours ahead of my time zone or behind my time zone because I'm in the East Coast. So you can just quickly move it back 2 hours without interrupting the GMT hand, because the GMT hand, that time zone's not changing, but I am. This is slightly different than an office GMT where the GMT hand itself moves around. The only snag with this is that it doesn't have a quick set date, so you do have to use this quick adjust hand to get to the desired date. So that can be a little bit frustrating, certainly if you leave it, if you don't wear it for a while and you need to advance it to the correct date. If it does bother you, you can put this on a watch winder, but I actually prefer this Traveler's GMT because it does allow you to quickly move the hand backwards and forwards without interrupting the second hand or without interrupting the GMT hand. The measurements of this watch are, I think, slightly deceptive. It's coming in at a 41mm case, 12.7mm thick with the boxed sapphire crystal, and then a 47 from lug to lug. Wears very well. It wears much smaller than that last Zelos. Because it's titanium, it is lighter, but this doesn't feel super light. It still has a substantial feel to it. The 47mm from lug to lug is expanding across my 7.2-inch wrist there very nicely, and because it is comparably slender at 12.7mm thick, but in fact only 11.5 without the crystal, it does wear extremely well. So if you've ever been put off before by Zelos watches being slightly bigger, you will not have a problem with this one. I think this will wear well. As you can see, I've got a little bit of a gap there. This will wear well even on smaller wrists. And because we have that female articulation at the lugs, the bracelet doesn't protrude beyond the watch case, which again really adds to that comfort. The only thing to note here on the bracelet is there is a slight transition, a step between the fitted end link and the top of the case. That might have been a design choice. This step, I think, could be slightly more refined, slightly better lined up, but overall that's a small thing, because the bracelet, there's no play at all in those end links, and it also is quick release as well. It's very easy to swap out. The clasp on this is beautifully machined. A machined mechanism, push button deployant. I suppose the only one thing is it is slightly large and slightly thick. That might be something to note. Because it's titanium, it is light and it does wear well. I have not had any problems wearing this and any concern whilst wearing it about the size of the clasp, but just something to note. I usually like to do a few pros and cons, but I'm actually struggling to find anything that I would improve. I think for $629 at the regular price, there is other versions as well. So it starts at $629, and then with other dials, and then there's a Damascus case one as well that comes in at $849. But I think for $629 to have a titanium case with a hardness coating, mechanical GMT using 9075 Miyota movement, which we've seen and loved in other watches like the Jack Mason, for example, a very high quality bracelet with quick adjust. You've got the addition of the carrying case. I am struggling to find anything that I think I would improve with this. I think the only thing is going to be, if you're deciding on this watch, is whether you like the look of the watch and whether you like the color choices. But if you are considering this watch, there is not much that I think could really be improved with this. I pretty much like almost everything about this, down to the angular case, the industrial signed crown. The movement and motion of the bezel is extremely precise and has a high quality feel. I even like the hands, which is something that I pointed out that I wasn't a big fan on the last Zelos watch. And this use of 3D lume is really, really spectacular. The 24-hour dial around the rehaut, that is quite small. So that's maybe probably the only fault and something you need to consider. But overall, I think they've done an excellent job of this, and a big thanks to them for sending me this in. So what did you think of the watch? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you want to get involved in the conversation live, why don't you join us for our panel show on a Sunday, the Sunday Social? Ask your questions live, give your opinions on some of the watches that I've been reviewing this week. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Casual Watch Reviews.